Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today we're going to do something that's happening live here at HETRA this week, and we want to share with you what we're doing and why we do it. So today I have Shelby Schultz, our program director, with us. Shelby, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Katie.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about Observation Week. It is Observation Week here at HETRA, and what does that mean and why do we do it? So we do some different observations for different areas of our programming. Our volunteers, our horse leaders, and like horse team side of things. And then for our instructors and therapists, kind of the global session to see how that's going. So, Shelby, why did we start doing observation weeks?
For us at HETRA, it's really a kind of a quality assurance kind of project for us to make sure that all of the pieces of our sessions are running as well as they can, and we're providing quality services that are going to be the most beneficial for our participants, and our horses and our volunteers are also getting a high quality experience while they're here at HETRA.
Mm-hmm. I think that it sort of initially started, the observation weeks I think were born from our horse team side of things first, right?
Yep. So when they first started, our horse team really got rolling with it to evaluate our horse leaders and our horses in sessions. So it's been something that we've always felt passionate about, that we want our horses to be happy in the sessions that they're doing, and we want to make sure that our participants in our horse matches are really successful. So we have a relatively large program here, and it's not something that it's feasible for us to watch every single lesson every single week. And especially our horse team, watching every single interaction that our horses have. So we have a really in-depth horse leader program, and the way that we train our horse leaders to lead in sessions. And so our horse team kind of got started with it to watch the horses in sessions, make sure that we're having positive interactions, and then added on to that by observing our horse leaders, and making sure that everybody that's leading at a gold level is leading effectively at that gold level, and everybody that's leading at a platinum level is effective at that platinum level. And also to see how our horses are functioning within their levels.
Right.
So our horses are also split out into blue, gold, and platinum. And we work with them in conditioning a lot, and we see them periodically in sessions. But the horse team during observation week is really being critical of those horses, and is that horse being successful there? And sometimes they are, and that's right where they need to be. And sometimes they've developed some maybe tendencies or habits that's challenging to the leaders at that level. So we need to level the horse up for more experienced leaders. Or our favorite thing is when our horses are doing so well and being so successful, that we can level them down, which really opens up the number of people that can handle them, and allows them to get to know more of our volunteers, and our volunteers to get their hands on more horses.
Right. And I remember we have a staff meeting every week. So all of our full-time staff meets every week to kind of discuss and troubleshoot and yada yada. And I remember that staff meeting where we were like, okay, what's the disconnect between so we train our leaders, they go through a rigorous training program, and then they come to leader practice. So they put their hands on the horses that are within their level, and sometimes the next level kind of up to train them on how to handle those horses and those behaviors. But some of our horses are very, very smart, and they have different behaviors when they don't have a rider mounted versus when they do. Yeah. And then we were also kind of having a disconnect with the session. Being in session is such a different energy than practicing in an arena with, no riders, no families, no other participants in the arena. The energy is a lot lower when they're practicing versus in the session. So when we do those observations, they are during a session, every other time that they lead. And I think we get a really true picture of the success of both the horse and the leader.
Yeah. And when we do the leader observations, we're putting eyes on every single session that happens here for a full week. So we're seeing the horse multiple times with multiple different handlers. We're seeing each handler usually with more than one horse, maybe on different days with different types of participants, because the other feedback that we get from our volunteers is that Not only do the horses behave a little bit differently in sessions than they do in practice, but also it's really different to lead just a horse than it is to lead a horse and a rider and two sidewalkers
Right.
and an instructor or therapist that may be following or, kind of tracking with the team. When there's 5 or 6 other horses in the arena and poles and cones and everything else that we're trying to navigate around. And we can replicate that to some extent outside of session time, but like Katie said, the energy is really different. And also, the amount of stress and strain that it takes not only on our staff, but also our other volunteers and our horses to schedule that many mock lessons to really replicate that environment. It just made sense for us to start going into sessions and observing this on a really regular basis.
Right.
So we do all 3 types of these observations get done once every course. And our courses, we run 4 12-week courses throughout the year. And so this is happening at basically quarterly, that all 3 of these types of observation are happening. We try not to run 2 types of observation at the same time. And the reason for that is because it just gets overwhelming for the volunteers and the staff that are in the barn if there's 3 different people who are down there trying to observe different things happening.
Right. You feel like you're under a microscope.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not
that.
that's not the intention. And when we first introduced this, especially with the horse leader and the volunteer side of things, people were a little skeptical about it. Like they kind of felt like they were being assessed or judged or whatever. But the longer we've done it, the more they've really taken a positive outlook on it, and they kind of look forward to it. Like if they see me in the arena, like I have, even if I'm not in there for observations, if I'm in the arena, I'll have a horse leader as they're kind of leading their horse by me say, am I using my wand correctly? Or can you help me with this? Or, kind of ask for that assistance. And they really strive for excellence. Like, and that's one thing we found with our volunteers is they're constantly wanting more education and want to know how to do better and be better. And they've really taken it and kind of run with it. And it's a really cool thing to watch.
Right. Every year we do that volunteer survey to kind of judge from our volunteers' perspective, how do they think their experience is? How do they think HETRA is doing? What do they like about it? Yada, yada. And on that survey, we ask, what keeps you coming here and what do you want more of? And almost every single year, the majority of them say education. We want to learn more about how to handle the horses. We want to learn more about, this or that. And so I think that having that volunteer, the way we structure our volunteers is, directly because of that. Our volunteers love to learn, and because they're learning and they feel really engaged, they stay with us for a really long time. If you're interested in learning more about how HETRA does that, kind of our volunteer structure and the training program and things, we do have a webinar. I'll leave that link in the show notes if you are curious to learn more about both our horse leader situation and our different volunteer levels and education. But so that said, our volunteer coordinator comes down and does, would you say it's like more observation based or more like they're down here for a week to help answer questions and troubleshoot and just get to know our volunteers?
I think it's both. So I think they're really looking at both our volunteer team, and they'll come down and they're again here for every session for a week. And sometimes they split theirs up a little bit depending on what their schedules look like, but they're doing both. So they're getting on down in the barn where they can interact with the volunteers, and the volunteers get to know them and they can really see what's happening in the barn. But they're also there to address any challenges that might be happening. So we all know you've had a volunteer that's been a little bit of a challenge at one point or another. So the volunteer team is really keeping an eye on those things, seeing how they can help improve that situation, or seeing volunteers that are doing really well that maybe are ready to advance, or just really developing those relationships.
And getting a feel for how sessions are running.
Yeah.
So like here at HETRA, we have sort of a gap hour at about 3:00 where we bring all the horses in, get them groomed up, get them ready. The horses that we are using for our afternoon sessions, which are like our 4, 5, 6, 7 sessions. So I know that like one time we did that observation and we had the volunteer coordinator down here and they're like, well, shoot, we don't have enough, tackers at 3:00 because, we're consistently running behind and feeling crunched for time. Well, no big deal. Maybe that was something that someone didn't really think to communicate at the time, but then our volunteer coordinator was able to see that and then plug in some more tackers or plug in the help that they need. It's really about how sessions are running as a whole, right? Not just individually, how are folks doing?
And I think that's something that all programs see with organic growth is like, okay, so we have 5 sessions tonight and we have the volunteers to accommodate 5 sessions and set out TAC for 5 sessions and, all these things. And we add a 6th session. Well, it's not that big of a deal. It's one more session. We can set out the TAC for that, whatever that might be. But pretty soon we've got 9 sessions happening. Right. We've almost doubled our number and we haven't increased our volunteer needs. And everybody's just gone from being comfortable to slowly accommodating a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And if you get an outside person in there and they go, well, you guys need more tackers. Like, that's an easy fix. We can get another tacker on the shift. Right. And sometimes it just takes an outside perspective to look and, you don't realize that it's getting busier and busier and harder to keep up because you're living it and doing it. And you're just making sure it's getting done. Right.
Because that's the nature of everyone in this organization. Yeah. It's like, you get what you get and you do the best with what you got, right? Yeah. And so we don't ever think about asking or, you don't want to seem like you're complaining or like that you need a lot of things, but sometimes just having that outside perspective is like, oh yeah, that is what
that would be nice. Thanks.
So on that same note, I know so I'm a therapist and instructor, and from that perspective, we do observations for our instructors and therapists as well. And I'll never forget the time we had observations come down and, it was observation week, and I think it was you, Shelby, that were observing that session. And you're like, why is that session kind of chaotic? Like, why do I feel like there's people going everywhere, each direction? Like, there's no cohesive, thing. And all of us therapists that were in that session kind of looked at each other and were like, I guess you're kind of right. But like, you're just managing your participant and like, you're not really thinking about like, what's that other, therapist doing? Or as an instructor, you're not really thinking about like those logistical things. You're thinking about delivering the best session that you can. And so having that outside perspective on the session as a whole was super eye-opening for me. Are you looking for a leg up in communicating more effectively with participants in your therapeutic writing and EAL lessons? Teaching Aids for EAS comes to the rescue with a range of more than 70 visual aids designed specifically for our industry. Each one has been designed by a PATH International certified professional who understands the unique challenges that we face inside and outside the arena. Visit teachingaidsforeas.com today to shop their range of fun, scalable, and affordable products, including flashcards, posters, activity boards, PEX cards, handheld cueing paddles, arena games, and more. They also work directly with instructors and centers to design custom products and solutions. As a special treat for my Not Just a Pony Ride listeners, use code HETRA, HETRA, for 10% off your order now through May 10th at teachingaidsforeas.com.
Yeah, I remember that. We were all in the therapy office and I came in and I was like, so talk to me about the session flow. Like, what's happening here?
It's like, what session flow?
Yeah, you guys were all like, well, I'm doing this and you're doing, and I'm like, everybody's sessions as a whole looked great, but the arena could probably flow better and make it easier for everybody to do their job.
Right.
So we kind of talked through some troubleshooting on that, and you guys are still implementing those changes.
For sure.
And every week I think you guys find something that you're like, oh yeah, we could do that. But it just took somebody saying like, we got to change a couple things. Right. And then now it's running really well.
And I think not being afraid of that feedback and being willing to change is like a huge part of that equation, right? But also we have to consider that, my session was going well. My participant was getting the therapy that they needed. I felt, really productive in my session. But in looking at that, hour as a whole, are our horses comfortable in that sort of seemingly chaotic situation? Are our volunteers a little bit stressed? Like, how do the other people feel?
And that's when we hear a lot on volunteer feedback is like the horse leaders, especially, they don't want to, step up in a lesson and say, this feels crowded or this, this feels like it could run smoother or something like that. But they definitely feel it when they're trying to kind of navigate traffic and move around things. So those are ones that give good feedback. And we talk a lot with our horse leaders about, like, if you have that feedback, say it, but sometimes it's hard in the moment.
Right.
To say that for people.
So then, I mean, you look at, so for instructors and therapists, we do kind of both kinds of observations. We do a more global observation where we're looking at, that session time as a whole. And for us, just so you listeners know, it could be, 3, sometimes 4 therapists working with their individual participants at a time. On one side of the arena, so that's kind of what we're talking about. And then in a different side of our arena, we have adaptive writing classes that are traditional, 2, 3 participant sessions. But so we do a global observation of like that session time, and then we also do a more targeted observation of like the specific therapist or the specific instructor and how their skills are either advancing or where they have room to grow.
Yep. Yeah, so myself as the program director, Katie as our lead therapist, and then our lead instructor, Cassidy, we all do this twice a quarter where we do the global and we all put eyes on. And all of us are certified instructors. Katie and Cassidy are both therapists. And we put eyes on every set of sessions, at least one of us. Mm-hmm. And then we come back and we talk through like, here's the things that are going well. Here's the things that we could improve on. And I would tell you almost every time with every single kind of these observations that we do, all 3 types, there's always a theme. Mm-hmm. And it's usually something that's easily fixable, but it's something that we need to remind people of. So, for example, like 2 times ago when we did leader observation, one of the themes was that our horse leaders were getting too close to their horses. Like they weren't giving their horses enough space. And we're really big on giving horses space. So we sent out kind of a global reminder. We also give direct feedback anytime we do an observation. Right. So if I'm watching horse observation or leader observation, or I'm watching session observation for an instructor or therapist, I'm going to give that individual directed feedback immediately after the session. Like, hey, these things look like they went really well. Mm-hmm. You might want to look at maybe a bigger saddle for your rider. They look like they're, starting to kind of age out of that saddle or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
But anyways, back to this leader. So we sent out like, hey, everybody's a little bit too close to their horses.
Yeah.
And then the next time we did observation, that wasn't a problem with even one person. Mm-hmm. Like everybody was just like, oh yeah. And they kind of remembered it. But then it was the next time it was like, we need you to use your wands a little higher. Mm-hmm. Everybody's using their wands a little too low and the horses can't see it as well. And it seems like there's always a theme. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes you catch those things kind of like overarching themes. So we come back as a group, we talk through like, what themes did we see? What's going well? What's not? And then we look at lessons and then we go to our second set of session observation where we're looking more closely at the skills of a particular instructor or therapist in a particular session and how that advancement's going. Or like Katie said, what room for improvement and training do we have there?
And we're not naive enough to say that like all of our sessions are easy. Mm-mm. Because they're absolutely not, right? No. We might have, working on higher level skills or, a participant that, maybe has more involved diagnosis or whatever it is. We are all going to have tricky, quote unquote, sessions, right? So how can we get together as a team and really come up with and troubleshoot things to make that the most successful? Because we at HETRA really embrace the sort of team mentality, right? Yeah. And nobody takes anything personally when we say, hey, this session might have some room for improvement and here's what you could try, because nothing is getting hurt there, besides your pride, maybe, if that's the way you feel. But we try to not look at it that way, because all we're doing is making that session better for the participant, for the horse, and for the volunteer, which ultimately improves longevity of our programming in our organization.
Right, exactly. In addition to that, when we do session observation, all different kinds of session observation, we try not to have the same person observe the same sessions time after time. So like if I watch the Monday night sessions, I don't want to watch Monday night next time. I want Katie to go and watch Monday night the next time we do observation, because she's going to pick up on different things than I did. Right. And she may pick up on the same things that I did, but the hope would be that we've made improvements between the 2 observation periods, or at least changes. And I want somebody else's eyes on that so that it's not only my eyes on that. Mm-hmm.
And this is just quality assurance, that's even if you just go back to safety at its core. I mean, I know everybody's probably sick of hearing us say it goes back to safety, right? Because that's what we always talk about. But honestly, I believe that the reason why HETRA's been able to have the growth that we've had and, the quality of programming that we have is because we take the time to do this, right? Yeah. Now, we're a little bit of a larger organization. So what does this look like for a center that maybe doesn't have, 3 people to go out and do observations on those different days or to do all of that?
Yeah. I think it can look very different for a lot of different places. And I think it really depends on how big your center is and what exactly where you want to start. Like we didn't start, like Katie said at the start of the episode, we didn't start all of this and just like take off and fly, right? Like we started with just wanting to watch the horses and the horse leaders. Mm-hmm. And it just has kind of grown from there. So I think you can really start wherever. If you're a small center and you're one instructor, maybe you could have somebody video your lesson and, get clearance from families and volunteers and send that lesson off to another instructor that you know, that's maybe down the road or in the next state or wherever, and say, hey, could you give me some feedback on this lesson? If you're a center where you've got 5 instructors, but no maybe overarching admin, maybe you guys just observe each other. Mm-hmm. So you say, this time Sally's going to do observations, and Sally comes and she watches the 10 lessons for the week. Yeah. And then the next time Joe does observations and he comes and he watches the 10 lessons for, whatever, and give each other feedback on that. And I think even from a horse or a volunteer standpoint, you can lean on your volunteers for that too. If you've got a really skilled horse person as a volunteer or within your community that's maybe a trainer or something that has a good idea of what you do, have them come in and say, hey, I want you to watch my horses. Tell me if you think my horses are happy, or if there's things we could do differently to help our horses be more happy, or, if there's different horse matches that we think we could make, things like that. I think there's a lot of people within the community that are willing to help. For sure. There's a lot of people that can get behind our cause, but maybe can't come every week. Maybe they can dedicate a couple hours a month to us. And maybe that if they have the type of skills, that's what they could do, is they can come and help video a lesson, or they can come and help observe horses, or help with training your whatever that might be. Yeah. I think there's a lot of people willing to help.
And a while ago, like even from a volunteer perspective, we implemented volunteer ambassadors, which are like sort of like liaison people that are experienced volunteers, and we try to have one like on each shift in case there's new volunteers that come in and need some guidance or whatever. But even somebody like that, like someone that's been with you guys for a long time as a volunteer, post them up in the barn for a session, or to help answer questions or troubleshoot, or that kind of thing. I think a little bit of something like that could go a long way.
And when we started the volunteer ambassadors program a couple years ago, that was a really good way for some of our volunteers who maybe have been dedicated to us for a lot of years, but can't necessarily walk in the sand anymore. Like they can't sidewalk anymore, or they can't lift a saddle anymore, whatever that might be. To have them do something that it's a highly skilled job.
It's important work.
It's a very important job, and gives them something they can do. They can still be tied in with our program and helping us somehow.
Right. So I guess the bottom line of all of this conversation is that it's observation week at HETRA. We're doing the best we can to improve our quality, improve our safety, and just make sure everybody's having a good quality time here, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're interested in more about what we do with our volunteer training levels, or about how we train our horse leaders in the different level systems like we talked about kind of today in our session, or in our podcast today, I'm going to link those in the show notes. They're super easy to access. You can rent them, learn everything that we do with our volunteers here at HETRA.
I have a little plug on that, Katie. And it's an idea.
An idea?
An idea.
You guys are hearing a live idea.
We should do a podcast on Advanced Academy.
Ooh.
So we offer a program that we call Advanced Academy for our more experienced volunteers that have risen through our volunteer levels, to really kind of step up the game on their horse skills. Yeah. We have a whole program set up that we call Advanced Academy that they love.
Stay tuned. I like that idea. That was a good idea, Shelby.
I can go home now.
You can go home now. Yeah, that's right. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening in. Also, as a bonus, we are going to share the observation. What would you call them? Like
form evaluation. It's not really an evaluation.
It's not, but it's a guideline that we use when we observe instructors and therapists to kind of give ourselves as the people who are observing places to look. Like, did they do their
checklist?
Yeah, like a checklist. There you go. Like did they do their safety check? Did they,
have appropriate skill progression? Was the activity appropriate for the participant? Did they teach to the group? Did they have appropriate intervention, all those things.
Yeah. So I am going to put a link in the show notes to access that. So click on that. You can download that free to your inbox. Also, if you are a Patreon subscriber, that will be showing up this week for you for free. So all those links are in the show notes. We appreciate you listening in, and we're off to go do observations.
Off we go.
That's all for today, but until the next episode launches, scroll down to the show notes and click on the link to get plugged in with us on Facebook, Instagram, or our exclusive educational club at Patreon. This podcast is presented by HETRA University, the educational arm of Heartland Equine Therapeutic Riding Academy in Gretna, Nebraska. HETRA University's mission is to provide high-quality educational offerings to the EAS community. Check out all the HETRA University has to offer at www.hetrauniversity.org.